Hi everyone, so today I'm going to show you how to print a photo from a negative. So the first thing you need to do is come over to the light box, grab a loop so that you can look at your negatives. You want to find a negative that has a good density and is nice and sharp and in focus. Once you have a photo picked out, come over here to the cage, check out a dark room, and make sure that you're getting not only your fixer, but also a negative brush. This negative brush is super handy to make sure that we get all the dust off of our negatives, and you can also blow air with it by squeezing it. So now it's time to get our enlarger set up. The first step you want to take is to make sure you open up the lens all the way. So this lens was set to f8, so I'm going to open it up all the way to f4. This is so we're getting as much light possible coming out so that we can better get our image in focus. Once we have our image in focus and are actually getting ready to print, we're going to stop it back down to f8, but for now we want it open up as much as possible. Okay, so now we need to get our negative into the negative holder. This negative holder actually swings open like so, and we're going to slip the negative between these two sets of metal circles here. Now when you take your negatives out, you want to make sure that you're not putting your fingers right on the part that you're going to print right on the photo. You want to pull it out by the edges and hold your negative by the edges. We don't want to get fingerprints on the actual negative. Now we also want to make sure that we're putting this emulsion side down. So emulsion side is going to be the side that's not glossy, the matte side. So that's the matte side, and this is the glossy side. Okay, so we want to get it emulsion side down. All right, so I'm just placed it right in there, slipped it in, and then close it up. All right, and at this point you can check to make sure that it's straight, always a good idea. Now I'm going to swing this down with this handle and put this in here. Make sure that you close it. All right, so now it's time to go ahead and turn off the lights and focus our image. Now when you place your negative in the negative holder, it is a good idea to go ahead and brush it and hit it with a little bit of air if necessary to get any dust or anything off. And you know, if you forget, you could go ahead and do it right now too. You can pull it out of the enlarger, brush it off. Now whenever you open this and you have the light on, it's going to let light out, so make sure you don't have any photographic paper. But yeah, if you're noticing that you're having dust, maybe you make your first print and you're like, man, that's dusty, just pull this out, dust it off. So at this point, I do have the door cracked a little bit so you guys can see, but you should be in the dark. You should have the main light off, you should have your safe light on, and the door closed. Now we want to go ahead and raise the enlarger so that it's covering, so the image is covering the entire easel, okay? Now to get the light on, remember we have to turn the enlarger timer to the focus with the switch so that it stays on while we're focusing. Okay, so now I'm gonna go ahead and raise the enlarger till the photo is covering about the size of this easel. And then I'm gonna go to the focusing knob right down here and turn it until it's looking like it's in focus. Now, I know that for myself, sometimes having the yellow easel makes it harder for me to see that it's in focus, and we can't necessarily use the white base because there's a difference in height, and so if it looks like it's in focus down here, it's not going to be in focus if this is a little bit higher. So what I like to do sometimes is put in a piece of plain white paper. Okay, so I placed a piece of white paper here so I could see it a little bit better, and I'm just slightly moving the focusing knob. When you're focusing, you're not doing huge turns, it's just very slight turns to try to really get it right. And just get it right to where it looks pretty clear to your eyes. And at this point, you might have to raise this and lower this a little bit to make sure that it's covering the entire easel area. Let's see, where am I gonna, all right. And if you're going to be doing any cropping, this is the time. You want to, basically wherever the easel is, that's the crop of your photo. Now, just be warned that if you try to crop a really small area, basically you're also enlarging any grains in the photo too. So if you're trying to do a really small area, it's gonna be looking a lot more grainy. Okay, so I think I have a good crop right about there. And me personally, I like to grab some tape and tape the edges down too once I get a good place so that it's not moving around. I don't actually accidentally bump it. Now, when you think it's in focus, it might still slightly be out of focus. And how we check that is actually with our grain focuser. So this grain focuser, it's a little confusing at first. You're not going to see an image. What you're actually seeing is the grains in the film. So it's going to look like a bunch of dots. What you're trying to do is get those dots nice and in focus. So not fuzzy dots, but sharp dots. Now, the thing with this is that you don't put your eyeball right on there. You actually pull back a little bit because you're focusing, your eye should be focusing on the glass that's right here. And you're gonna see there's like a spot of light, and you're trying to look at that light, and like I said, it looks like a bunch of little dots, a bunch of like sand. So you just want to very slightly turn this back and forth until you see that those little bits of sand are nice and in focus. Okay, so this is what you're going to see about. Of course, it's going to look a little different for your image, but we want to be able to see the different grains. Now I'm going to go ahead and move it out of focus. And that was just a very small turn. So you just got to remember that when you're trying to get this in focus, you are doing very small turns, not anything dramatic. I'll go the other way, and again, out of focus, and let's get back into focus. Oop, oop, oop. There we go. Nice and in focus. So now that we're in focus, I need to add a contrast filter. We're gonna add the contrast filter right up here. So there's this little door that opens up. Now, right now the light is still on. So if you add contrast filters, when the light is on, make sure that you don't have any photographic paper out because it can fog your paper. So I'm gonna go ahead and open this up, and there's a little tray that slips out, okay? So this is what holds the filter in place. So let me go ahead and grab my filter pack that should have come in your basket. And there's filters that range from -1 contrast, all the way to +5, that's adding contrast. What a good place to start off is usually 2.5. So I'm going to switch to the 2.5 page, slip out the filter, and I'm going to place the filter right in here. All right, sweet. Now we're going to put the filter back in, the filter holder back in here, and close this door. And now we have a filter on the image. Now at this point, it's also a good time to go ahead and change the f-stop. So if you remember, I was at f4, I need to go back to f8. One of the reasons we use f8 is because on any lens, 2 stops from the largest is going to be the sharpest f-stop that you can have a lens be at. So if I took the exact same photo at f4 versus f8, it's going to be sharper in f8. The same goes with the enlarger. It's going to be sharper, your image is going to be sharper when you're at f8. Okay, so I have my filter in, I've changed this to f8. Now I need to make sure I flip my switch off from focus to time, because now I'm going to go ahead and set my timer to 5 seconds, and it's time to do our first test strip. So if you're wondering where to put your test strip, you have this whole photo, right? What I like to do, there's a couple different ways to go about this. I like to make sure I get my test strip first on the most important part. So what's my subject? And I try to look for a place where the darkest part of the photo and the lightest part of the photo is going to be there. Now, so for example, the photo I'm printing, it was taken actually right here on campus of someone skateboarding. And so you can see I have my main subject. I've got him, part of his body here. And then I also have the school back here going on. And you can see this is going from lightest, so that's 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 seconds. Now, So I've got, you know, the dark areas and the light areas throughout here, and I also have most of my, or a part of my subject here. So I'm gonna go ahead and pick a time that is, you know, it has good details in both the dark areas and the light areas. So it looks like for this, it's probably gonna be at about, oh, my 15 looks pretty good. I might want to go a little bit lighter. So I think I'm going to do my next test strip by doing 12, 13, 14, 15. No, let's go 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. And so I'll get a bit even better idea of what time is going to work out best for this. Now, something else to consider is that you don't always have to go down like this. You can do a wider strip and do, you know, stripes going this way. It really depends on the photo and where the most important parts are and where you want to get your testing from. If you have a really difficult photo, it is completely acceptable to do a whole sheet. I've done that before. So yeah, you could do a full test sheet basically to really see what's going on, and it doesn't have to be straight. If you do a full test sheet, you could do diagonals. It's really up to you and what is going to work best for your photo. Okay, so I did my second test strip and I decided to do, I had a half a sheet in there, so I decided to do a half a sheet, and then I discovered a big problem, so I'm glad I did this. So even though I had some really great detail on my dark areas on my subject and his shirt, the sidewalk has like no detail in it. So at this point, yeah, I need to make a decision. Am I okay with there being no detail? That's technically not, you know, what we're looking for. The sky also has no detail. If I go darker, will that help? It will, but then I will lose the detail in the dark areas when I gain detail in the highlights. So for this, I think I'm actually just going to go darker. So where I went from 15 last time, I think I'm actually going to try for, I think I'm going to try for the 25-second area instead and see if I get any detail down here as well. I also want to show you guys how to actually get your paper into the easel. So the ends here are open and the paper just slips underneath here. So let me show you. I'm just going to put this right here and slip it right in. And what's nice about this type of easel is that it will also create a nice white border once you print your photo. So once you have your final print, go ahead and process it, dry it in the dryer, and bring it to me to get checked off.